Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the QT2 Systems podcast series, My Greatest Moment. I'm pleased to welcome our guest for today, Jason Howard. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you, Reem. I'm really excited to do this. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on. I just want you to start today by telling us what your greatest moment is.
Greatest moment was definitely completing my first full distance Ironman, which was Ironman California last month.
All right.
Yeah.
That is that first one. You can never have the first again. So I'm glad you had a good experience on that first.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
it was amazing. It was everything you would think it is and then some. So yeah, I'm definitely proud of the accomplishment.
okay. We're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about that day, but I want to back up and learn about how you found yourself on the starting line of Ironman California last month. Can you talk about how you got into the world of triathlon?
Sure. Yeah, so I've always been a runner, not a serious runner, but it's kind of been my drug of choice when it comes to staying in shape, right? And I had a foot injury. I broke my foot playing basketball with my son. And when I was coming out of the boot, the doctor would not let me run for a matter of weeks, and he said I could do closed chain exercises. So I could do things like elliptical and swimming and cycling. And I'd always had it as a goal that I wanted to do an Ironman one day. I have it on a vision board. I had never, I mean, I'd always known how to swim. I've always known how to ride a bike, but I've never done it competitively or I've never trained. So it's kind of a weird sort of pipe dream type of a goal that had no, I guess, foundation. But when he told me I could bike and swim, like I remember specifically in that doctor's office, I was like, oh, this is an opportunity to start that, right? And so I did started swimming, started my and it this happened right around my birthday last year, and my family chipped in to get me a gift card at the Trek store. So I went and got a bike and started swimming and biking, and yeah, the rest was history, as they say.
Yeah. So I'm curious for someone, I mean, who runs but didn't swim and didn't bike, how did Ironman end up on your radar?
I honestly don't remember where that bug or when that bug bit me. It's a while ago though. Like I said, it didn't really have a real foundation. I've always been someone who's pushed myself, right? Personally, professionally, athletically. I like to do like Spartan races, and through COVID, I did run I'd never been on a marathon starting line, but through COVID, I ran my first marathon just around my neighborhood, and um, I'm a small business owner, so just ways to push myself are always on my mind. And Ironman, has this reputation of being the most. It's the precipice of you know uh sort of your self challenge, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
so I'd always been interested in, I think, from that perspective. But yeah, like I said, I never really put anything towards it until I was recovering from that injury.
Okay. So
Yeah,
the injury happens, it sparks and says, okay, like
yeah,
maybe this is my sign. I'm supposed
yeah,
to, I'm
pretty much.
supposed to do it.
Yeah.
So how did you learn to swim? How did you start swimming?
So I knew how to swim since I was a kid. I know, like my mom had put me in swimming classes. So, I knew how to do the basic strokes, freestyle and breaststroke and whatever. But going from there to, swimming 2.4 miles, there's a lot in between, right? So I remember the first swim, I got in the pool without goggles, without anything, right? Just jumped in the pool at LA Fitness. And I was like, oh, yeah, there's some things that so the first swim I just did 30 minutes of breaststroke, just down and back, and was destroyed. My back was so sore the next day. And got the goggles, got earplugs, got, some of the tools you need, and then just started chipping away at it. And at that point, I didn't have any guidance, and I kind of was just winging it, and so I didn't know of any, or I didn't think or know of any drills, to do. I would just swim as long as I could until it got longer and longer and longer, right?
Mhm.
Uh, until I was able to do. Yeah, so I started with my first sprint. Was really quick, actually. My first sprint was in July of last year, and I was cleared from the boot beginning of June. So
Oh, okay, really quick.
yeah, so I went from the couch to my first sprint within 6 weeks, I think it was,
Okay.
and and but the swim, on a sprint, the I think it was 500 meters for that sprint. Um, really wasn't too challenging because I had far past that. I don't know. I guess I had a pretty good swimming foundation. I wasn't trying to learn how to swim from scratch, so it really was just, building the endurance for it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. So wow, that's quick. And you live, I think we were talking before, you live outside of Houston. I'm just
Yes.
wondering how hot that first race was in
That
July.
first race was really hot.
Yeah.
My wife and I laugh about it a lot today because when I crossed the finish line, I was in such like shock. Like she tried to hug me and kiss me, and I was like, not right now, not right now. I like pushed her off, and I was like trying to like process what had just happened, you
Yeah.
know. And so now she's like the ultimate Sherpa, right? So now I make it a point. She's the first person I see and kiss and
Yeah.
hug after the race. But I'll never forget that first moment where I was just like, "Don't touch me, don't talk to me. I don't know what happened."
Well, I'm glad you saw the error in your ways there.
Yeah.
So when you finished and you crossed the finish line that first one, what was that? Other than the initial shock, what was that
It was
feeling?
awesome. It might as well have been an Ironman, because it was just, again, it was so fresh off the injury, and that injury was so depressing because it was my first major injury. I played sports all through high school,
Mhm.
football, basketball, soccer, you name it. I had never had a significant injury ever. And that injury was really more mentally debilitating than it was physically. As physically debilitating as it was really a huge mental thing because it was something that I had not ever gone through. Just the idea of not being able to walk, was really a mental struggle. So um to go from that, and I had gained so much weight because, like I said, the mental thing really messed with me. Like I had these big plans. I was like, well, just because my foot is hurt doesn't mean I can't, work out my upper body, and I'm going to get in the best upper body shape of my life, and yada yada yada. But I really couldn't overcome it. And so, um, I guess it was that sort of, you can swim, you can bike. When I was coming out of the boot, that the light bulb went off.
Mhm.
And to go from as heavy and obviously as weak as my whole right leg was from not walking and being in a boot for 12 weeks, to go from that to finishing crossing the finish line on that first sprint distance was, like I said, it might as well have been an Ironman. I was like, man, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I turned that around. So, once, like we're saying, once the dust settled after the first few minutes of like getting over the shock of what I just put my body through, I was really, not only proud and excited, um, for what I just accomplished, but looking forward to what I could do next with it. So
So what came next after that?
so after that, um, we did another couple sprint or two. Then I did my first Olympic in Galveston,
Mhm.
and I finished second in my age group, and qualified for nationals. So that was amazing. Um, and that was supposed to be like the last race of the year. And I ended up being really disappointed because it was an ocean swim, and they cut everybody to sprint distance because the current was too strong. And then on the run course, it was really poorly marked, and so we'd all missed like some part of the course. I can't remember what it was, but we ended up running like 5.5 miles or something instead of the 6.2. We're all crossing the finish line and we're all like, did you get like 5 miles? Like, you know,
Mhm.
and so I was really upset. I was like, man, I didn't even get a full Olympic experience. And one of the guys was like, I was like, I got to find another race. I can't end my race. Like, I was looking for my first season to end on like this huge challenge, and it wasn't. And I was like, I got to find another race. Right. And then one of the guys was like, well, there's the Texas Oilman, which is a half distance race here in the Houston area. And I was like, well, that seems a little ambitious to go from Olympic and to, half distance within, I think it was like 6 weeks. And I ended up signing up that same day before I even left the race site. Cause yeah, I just wanted to feel that. I wanted to feel the end of the season, like exhausted, and I just wasn't that. And so yeah, so then I did my first half distance there shortly after.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And how would you feel on that day? That is a pretty big jump to go from
Yeah.
to a half.
Honestly, I felt really good. The bike really kicked my butt because it was rolling, and the Houston is really flat, and my like where I train around my neck of the woods is pancake flat, and I didn't really look into it enough to know that it was rolling the whole way, and that really caught me off guard. But I pushed through it, and then I had a really strong run, where I had a stronger run than I had anticipated, especially after what the bike put me through.
Okay.
So I was really happy with how I was able to come out of that, so quick. Like I think it was I think it was late October, early November. In kind of the same feeling that I had at the sprint race, to go from broken foot on the couch, as heavy as I've been, to half distance, a few short months later. I was really proud of that, turnaround, to go from the lowest lows to the highest highs within such a short window. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, even from when you got your boot off to that race, I mean, it was 6 months, not
Yeah.
even,
Not
right?
even. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's huge progress. So, during this time, you were self-coaching.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
If you could call it that. I was just winging it, just
Okay.
kind of just building. You go for, a 20-mile bike ride. The next weekend, you try to go for a couple more and then a couple more until you hit the 56. And then you kind of have that. I had that same sort of strategy across the three disciplines, right? But I had no idea about fueling. I had no idea about recovery. I had no idea about how to train. I had no idea. You're just winging it. And so, but I was able to figure it out enough to finish that race, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So at some point though, something changed and you decided that you wanted to hire a coach. So what was it that prompted you to hire a coach?
So I actually re-injured myself, opposite foot. Um, so right after, I was also training for the Houston Marathon, which was in January. And so after the um, Texas Oilman, I remember I had like this running program where the weekend of the Texas Oilman, it was supposed to be like a, I don't know, 16-mile run or so. And so I was like, oh, well, cool. Well, I'll just do this Texas Oilman and I'll do the 13. And that, plus the bike and the swim, that'll more than make up for the 3 miles that I missed. Right.
Mhm.
But I didn't take into consideration like recovery from that whole event. So the next day, I went on a 3 mile recovery jog, just a little, treadmill jog, and I tore my peroneal tendon in my right foot, and yeah, that took me out for 12 weeks. And so, as I was going through physical therapy, um, my my physical therapist, she was like, "You need to." You never should have been running the day after a half distance triathlon. And she was like, you need some coaching, you need some structure, you need someone to kind of, tell you what to do and save you from yourself. So yeah, so she recommended QT2, and I was able to get back into training in February of the following year. And then I signed up and started coaching with Bob in March
Okay. So
of
you
this
work with
year.
Bob Richter as
Bob
is
Richter, yeah.
yeah. Okay. So were you already signed up for Ironman California when you hired him, or where that?
No,
Okay.
no. I had an idea, right? I had an idea that I wanted to do a full distance race this year. I had no idea how, I had no idea which one. I knew that it was going to be a flat one because I had learned from that half distance one that I just there's not the terrain that I can train on to get where I need to be for a hilly bike. But it's kind of one of those things you don't really know how, but you just know that you want to. And so that was one of the first things I asked Tim and Bob, was like, is this even a realistic goal? Can I do a full distance Ironman? Come, because I kind of fell into the same death trap mentally when I injured my other foot, um, where I fell out of shape again and kind of had to start from scratch. Definitely had to start from scratch. Like it's 3 months of like nothing, right? So it was kind of like one of those, is this even realistic, or, um, I hadn't officially signed up,
Mhm.
but that was something that Bob and I worked on together, like, what we could realistically do in terms of half. So I did my half of the year I did 70.3 Ohio. And then yeah, we decided on California.
Okay. So from following a wing it plan to now working with a coach who's as organized as Bob is,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say, like, what were the biggest changes that you felt?
Um, Gosh, so many changes. So the first thing is like just having a real structured strategy in terms of when you're training what, you know. Second is the strategy within the training sessions. Like I kind of talked about earlier, I had never done like, you know, drills or, do this many 50s or do this many hundreds. And, I would just swim, and so like learning how to, and then seeing how to build, like you said, like the structure and the organization changes everything. And then also, like my physical therapist was saying, knowing when to push and when to back off and when to recover. You kind of need, because I have a feeling probably most people who are, you know, wanting to do an Ironman to begin with are probably pretty aggressive, right? And so sometimes you got to know when to pull it back, and you don't always know that. Sometimes it takes someone to tell you, okay, it's okay. Like you can you don't have to go so hard on this run, and you can take this day off, and So that was really important too.
Yeah. Yeah, yesterday I actually got a message from one of my athletes after her recovery ride, and she's like, I'm starting to really understand the purpose of these
Yeah,
rides. I was
yeah,
so excited. I'm like, we
yeah,
get the purpose of the hard rides, but knowing that part of the training is to allow your body to recover and let
yeah,
everything that you worked for sink in, you
yeah,
know.
for sure.
So, so important.
Yeah.
And you must have, through Bob, also the nutrition piece. You mentioned before that you didn't know anything about nutrition, right? So,
That was a huge thing. Both just regular nutrition during training and also race fueling. I had you go buy some booze or something and whatever. But doing the whole sweat test and understanding what my sodium loss is, and really having a fueling strategy, and then carb loading strategy, because you know the typical, if you have never spoken with a nutritionist or somebody who understands endurance racing nutrition, you hear carb loading and you're like, yeah, I'm just going to eat a big bowl of pasta the night before, or, go out for pizza the night before. You don't really understand what the whole picture looks like, and that was a huge thing. That was a huge learning experience, with, you know, QT2 is the whole nutrition piece, which is as critical as any other piece, because without that, there is no Iron Man if you can't fuel for it.
you can fake a sprint, you can
Yeah,
to fake an Olympic. I mean,
yeah,
I understand like the run.
yeah,
You always know when people run, their run lasts as long as their bike, that something was going on.
yeah, exactly.
So, all right, so let's go to Ironman California this year. So,
Okay.
what just like getting to that starting line? How was that? Like as you were lining up, waiting to roll into the water, what was your feeling that morning?
Oh man, what a great question. You know, I was really calm until I got to that line. So at nationals, for the first time, I had this bizarre panic attack in the swim. Like the first, right when we started the swim, I like started hyperventilating. I almost quit. It was Olympic distance in Atlantic City, and after 10 minutes or so, I pushed through that, and the rest of the race went fine. But um, and I hadn't really thought about that again until I started going down towards the water. And I was like, oh my gosh, what if I have another panic attack and the water's so cold? I did the practice swim. I'd done the practice swim the couple days before, and the water is freezing, right? And I'm like, if I start having a panic attack and hyperventilating, and water that's 50, 60 something degrees, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to overcome that. So you start getting in your head. And then I started talking myself out of it. And I was like, well, look, at that point, I was really confident. Like swim and bike and run, I was really confident about the race. Like from get go, I felt really prepared. Bob really got me to a place where I was peaking at the perfect time. On all my training sessions, my runs were peaking, my swims were peaking, my bikes were peaking. So I was super confident, maybe even overconfident, until I got to that swim start, and I started getting in my own head about this, what if I have another panic attack type of thing. And then I was like, you know what? If you can get through the first 10 minutes of the swim, you will be an Ironman. And I just kept telling myself that over and over as I kept getting closer and closer. And it worked. And then you just focus on that first 10 minutes. You took it slow, made sure I was breathing, made sure I was, and I got through the first 10 minutes. But it's funny how your mind, as you get closer, your mind starts to freak out, like, oh my god, this is
Yeah.
happening.
For sure. But you did, yeah. The number of times I've had to remind people to breathe when they swim. It's
Yeah,
like, you must
yeah,
breathe.
Yeah.
I use the counting technique. Count to 100 and breathe every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Or
Something to get,
whatever, something to
yeah,
distract.
something to keep your mind not fixated on, you know, dying. Yeah.
Well, that's a good alternative. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got through the swim, and I guess one nice thing about California is it's downriver, so it makes up for the, freezing water temperatures and everything. Those were fast. When I saw the swim times coming out this year, I'm like, was that current really faster? They shortened the swim, but
Yeah. No, it was,
yeah,
I, I had a really strong swim. Even, of course, we had the current assisted swim, but I beat the time that I was hoping for, even with the current assist. Um, and this may just be a personal thing. I didn't really feel the current. You see it on the clock, but it doesn't feel like you're like on a water slide or anything. You're just swimming. Um, I the one thing was, you're coming down the Sacramento River and then you cross over into the American River, or vice versa. I can't remember how it goes, but point is, second river is a few degrees colder, and so that current and that temperature change you feel, because of course you first get in, and it's freezing at the beginning of the swim, and you're then you get adjusted. By the time you get to the river intersection, you're halfway in, and by that time your body's adjusted, right? And then you get hit with this new current and this new temperature, and you just knocks the breath out of you again, you know
yeah, yeah.
then you have to readjust. But I was really happy with my swim. Like, it was honestly the best swim I'd had in any race.
Awesome.
Um so um yeah, I was like, it was definitely a great start to the day.
Okay. And then, all right, so you transition off, go to the bike, and how did the bike part of the day go?
Bike went really well as well. So it's an out and back twice. So the first out, so they're telling us, yeah, you're gonna have a little bit of winds. So the first out, you got these winds, and it was bearable. And then the second out, though, I don't know if it's fatigue or if the winds picked up like double time, but it was brutal. No, it wasn't fatigue. The wind picked up, and it was brutal.
No,
So I
that's
remember,
what I heard. I
yeah,
heard that was pretty dumb.
it was not fun. And
Yeah.
so like, I don't even know what, you got the long straw, um, like grass that's like 4 or 5 feet tall. I don't know what it's called, but it's like horizontal to the ground, and all the mile markers are blown off the course. Yeah, and you're just like, and then I got to the turnaround point, and I saw that I was close to, I was really risking missing my goal time. And I was able to, sort of hunker down and really, really hit it hard on the way back with
Mhm.
some tailwind assist, and beat my time. So the bike I was really happy with as well. Um, so through the swim and then through the bike, I had really had sort of a dream. The first two were a dream, you know. So yeah,
All right, and now comes the do or die time.
yeah,
Run, the Iron Man run.
yeah. I know, and for me, I'd always been a runner. Like I said, I've never been fast. I've never been competitive, but it's just what I know and what I do. So I'm always looking to get to the run. I'm kind of like the opposite. I'm like, let me get through the swim, let me push through the bike, and then I know I can do the run. And so I came out of the run feeling really good, like guns blazing. Even I had to slow down a little bit because my pace was faster than where we wanted it, and I was like, well, let me pump the brakes a little bit. Um, and then sure enough, around mile 7, mile 8, um, something was going on in my right foot and derailed the whole day. And this is really where, my greatest moment came from. You know, of course, crossing the finish line is is the moment we're all striving for. But overcoming this foot thing was really the greatest moment, I think. Um, Man, sorry. I'm like I'm going through all the emotions again, like of that moment. So, um, mile 7, I start to feel this thing in the arch of my right foot, right? It's building and it's building, and then it gets to the point to where I have to stop. So I stop, I pull over, take off my foot, I take off my shoe, I stretch, you know, sit down and try to massage it. It's so sensitive to the touch. I was worried that it was something that was injured, right? And again, this is like mile 7, 8. So, you're thinking, okay, 18 miles of this is just not possible, And so I'm like, okay, well, maybe I can walk it off. So I put my shoe back on. I didn't make it 100 yards before I was like, I can't, I had to pull over again. Took my shoe back off, massaged it, stretched it, and um, um, it started to feel a little bit better. Put my shoe back on, and I took off on a little trot. And I found like to where I could run and roll on the outside of my foot, kind of avoiding the arch. Um, it was bearable, right? But again, it's like you can't do this for 18 miles. And so sure enough, after maybe a mile of that, I start to feel that peroneal that had injured flare up. And it felt exactly how it felt on the treadmill when I had injured it last year. And so when I was on the treadmill, like I said, it was a 3-mile recovery jog, right? So I started to feel like this tightness in my foot, and I was like, oh, whatever. I was like maybe a mile and a half in. I was like, I'm gonna jog this last mile and a half, and then get off of it, ice it, whatever, and it snapped, right? And it was kind of like didn't see it was just one step. I remember so vividly the step where it was like, oh, it's over, right? The run's over. Um, and so anyway, fast forward on this run, I've got my arch, which is bothering me, and now I've got my peroneal feeling just like how it felt on the treadmill. And I had found sort of this position on my foot or a way to push off of my foot, like very specific, where it felt okay between the two, like nagging things, right? So I'm pushing through it, and in some way, it gave me something to focus on because I was like hyper focused on pushing off of this precise spot. Because if I was too far inward, it would really hurt my arch, and if I was too far outward, it would really hurt my peroneal tendon. So in some way it got me through to like be able to focus on something and not worry as much. But I just knew there was this thing in the back of my head that was like, any step at this point, it's over, right? Because I didn't know on the treadmill what step that was going to be. And I just knew, you know, there was no way it was going to survive double-digit miles. It was just impossible, right? And so and then I had to battle these demons of, okay, do I quit, right? In just all of the training and the travel and the money and the just everything, the whole picture, right? To get to this point, you know, I had this amazing swim, I had this amazing bike, I've got, 2.5 hours left. Do I quit, Or the other alternative is I push through and sacrifice the next 12 weeks, because at that point it was a foregone conclusion in my head that it's going to happen, right? So it was like I went through a really dark place for a minute. And at one point I was running and I looked down at my foot, and um it was like angled inwards, and I couldn't control it. So even if I wanted to straighten it, I couldn't. And I was like, something told me it was a cramp in my arch. I was like, maybe it's a cramp that's like, and that's why my foot is coming in. It's because that muscle is cramped up and is pulling on it. And that gave me like a ray of hope. I was like, well, if this is just a cramp, all I got to do is fix that. Right. And God love my amazing wife and Sherpa. You know, you have the run personal needs bags and the bike personal needs bags. And I was like, well, what would you even put in a run personal needs bags? And so she was like, well, maybe you should pack, you know, Band-Aids in case you get blisters, or another pair of socks, or, you know, some Tylenol or some aspirin. So anyway, I ended up packing aspirin, or I'm sorry, Tylenol into my, and another pair of socks and Band-Aids. Took all of her advice.
Right.
And at that point, I'm like, okay, I just need to get to my personal needs bags, try to get to the Tylenol. And so mile 13, got to the personal needs bags. I sat down again. And keep in mind, this whole time, as it flares up, I was still having to stop and pull over and take my shoe off and massage it and stretch it. You know, I'm just having to baby it the whole way. At that point, I'm like, I just got to get to mile 13. So I sit down, I change my socks. You know, I really made it a point to just get off my feet. Um, the next aid station, which probably was mile 14 or 15 or whatever it was, I got some water, took down the Tylenol, and within, you know, probably 20, 30 minutes, so probably by mile, you know, 15, 16 or so, the arch thing was gone. And then at that point, it was all about focusing on keeping my gait back to normal so that I don't injure the peroneal, right? But there was a moment when that pain went away. And at that moment, I knew, like, I did it. Like, at that point, you know, you got 10 miles or less left. And I was like, I did it. Like, at that point, I might as well have crossed the finish line, because I knew that I was going to make it at that point, you know, without the injury, right? It was like I'd gone from this horrible set of choices. It was like, do you quit, or do you injure yourself and throw off your whole year next year, right? And it was like neither, right? I got to finish and I got to escape the injury. But I just so vividly remember, like, and every time I would see my wife Sarah, you know, in the crowd, I'd be like, man, I don't know, like, I can't tell if it's injured, you know. But I remember after that moment, I had like just passed her, and or I was just about to pass her, and then when I passed her, I was like, let's go. I was, and she knew that I knew at that point, because I think she was worried a little bit too, you know, because every time I would pass her, I'd be like, I don't know, you know, I just don't know. I don't know if I can finish. Is it injured? You know, whatever. And but yeah, that moment was as good, if not better, than crossing the finish line. Because, like I said, it was, even though I hadn't yet, and technically a lot of things can happen over 10 miles. At that point, I had done it, you know, and so that was probably the 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 biggest jump from low to high that I've experienced probably in my life, right? Because it was just, yeah, like I said, I get emotional thinking about it, because it was just such a hard emotional place, like to have to go through that decision making process, you know, and then to go to like, wow, you're about to be an Ironman, you know. Yeah, so
I mean, it's such a long day out there, and so many things can happen, you know,
yeah.
as the day goes on, and you could have made different choices, and your day would have ended up completely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just be able to take that time and stretch, and think that's a smart wife for telling you to make
Yeah,
sure
right.
you needed to in your personal needs bag. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that moment when you just know you can do something is such a
Mm-hmm.
powerful moment.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, and then, you know, shout out to the Sherpas, because, you know, like you said, you can fake your way through a sprint, maybe even an Olympic, but you know, that support is just so critical. So um, she's been at every race, and I think without her, I probably wouldn't have gotten through this one. So shout out to the Sherpas out there. Y'all do more than you realize.
It's huge. I mean, being you're the one that's out there racing, but they were in many ways with you every step of the way.
Yeah.
And being at an Ironman is one
Yeah.
Ironman is tough work.
It's a
There's
long day too for
nothing
them,
easy
you know.
about
My
it.
gosh.
It is a very long day.
It's a
So
long day, you know. Another really cool moment is I think the last time I saw her before the finish line, I think we're at mile like 24. she she starts running alongside me and she was like, "Oh my God, you're about to freaking do it. I can't believe it." And that was a really cool moment too, just
yeah,
because, you know, like it was becoming real for both of us, you know. And
right.
she was like, "Oh my God, I gotta beat you to the finish line." I was like, you better scoot.
Yeah,
Because I'm feeling better now. I'm moving now.
I love it. I love it. So you finished Ironman California. Now you've got a couple weeks, so you figured out what's next for you.
Yeah, so I definitely want to continue to push. I'm gonna wait to do my next full distance one until the back half of next season. I really want to focus on taking the off season and the beginning of next season to work on some of the stuff, the foundational stuff to avoid these injuries.
Mhm.
You know, so strengthening and, you know, through having a lot of these foot injuries and leg injuries, you know, your whole chain of movement gets messed up, right? As you're compensating or overcompensating.
Mhm.
So really want to address that stuff. So that's what we're focusing this off season on, is fixing some of those foundational things and building some strength. And then, you know, we've got some ideas for some halves. Um, you know, like I said, a full one at the end of the year, and of course we'll sprinkle some, you know, some Olympics and some sprints in there. There's a great my first race is a local sprint right outside of my neighborhood. So I'll, you know, we'll keep doing those, and I'll be back at nationals next year. So I'll do that. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to, like, all I could think about at the end of that race was what if, in a positive way. Like, what if that foot thing had never happened, because I was on track to really like crush all of my goals. You know, like I said, it's a long day and no Ironman goes as expected, right? There's always some stuff. But, you know, I was just flying so high after the swim and then the bike and then the first piece of that run. Like, if that foot thing hadn't happened, all I can imagine, like, now I'm chasing that, right? Like, I want to just have I want to complete a full distance race without that thing. And again, there's going to be some other challenges, you know, but you know, those sort of, you know, physical challenges, you know, it's not like catching a flat or, you know, whatever. Those sorts of things like really are debilitating. You know, if you catch a flat and you can, you know, swap another tube in there, you're like, okay, well, that took me, you know, it took me 10-15 minutes to do. My real bike time was this, right? For that, I really have no idea where my run time would have been, because you can't really tell, you know. So I really want to. I can't wait to get back out there to get a full run experience. Hopefully, you know, knock on wood, right?
Yeah. Well, I can see your excitement, and maybe that's part of the fun part. It's like
Yeah,
you're like, okay, now how do I do this better, and how do
exactly.
I get my body to cooperate with what I want to,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
it sounds like you've caught the bug, so
Yeah,
we'll follow you for a while now.
yeah.
And how about your wife? Any interest?
So,
Okay.
so I've got her to commit to doing the local sprint next year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
So her and my son as well. My son is 13,
Okay.
and so I've got them committed to trying a sprint and seeing where that goes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good. Make it a family thing. Now, though, if she gets the bug that you have to Sherpa, right? You get that bug.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is that, I'm really reluctant to give selfishly, right, to give up that Sherpa support because she is as good as they come. So or if we race together, then what? And I feel kind of stranded because now I'm totally dependent.
It's you find a new way, but having
Yeah,
that
for sure, for sure.
shared interest in finding ways to support each other. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Love your story. So
Thank
thank you so much for coming on today and sharing
Yeah,
your experience so far. And
my pleasure. Yeah, I'm
congratulations.
I'm I'm thrilled that you guys would have me on. It's been a super short but really exciting ride, and so much learning, kind of like what you alluded to earlier. Like every race, there's so much that goes into triathlon, right? From transition to prep to nutrition to and that's all the stuff that's not training
Oh yeah.
the run, the bike, and the swim. Like there's so organization, it just and every race you figure something out. You know, you get this piece better, and oh, okay, I got that. So anyway, it's been a really short ride so far. It's been like 15, 16 months or whatever that is, but um, it has been the most rewarding ride. No pun intended. So um, even being able to come and talk to you on this short little start to my career is very, very, very humbling. So I appreciate it. I appreciate it very much that you guys would have me on.
Well, thank you very much. And good luck with everything as you go forward. And I'm sure there will be a lot of great stories, but this
Yeah.
one we'll never, ever forget.
Yes, for sure. And one last shout out to Bob, Coach Bob. Thank you so much for helping me get through it. Wouldn't be able to do it without you. And look forward to see what's next.
All right. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.